So I believe we have everybody here at 7 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 17, 2020 City of Fraser Regular Planning Commission meeting. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's Executive Order 2020-59 prohibits all public gatherings of any number of people until after August 17, 2020. Therefore, the City of Fraser Planning Commission will meet electronically in accordance with Executive Order 2020-48. This notice is required to ensure that those wishing to observe and or participate in the meeting have the opportunity to do so. The Planning Commission's regular meeting will take place on Monday, August 17, 2020 this evening at 7 p.m. using Zoom for video conferencing and public access. The public may attend and address the Commission via the Zoom application, the Zoom website, and or telephone. The public will be able to listen to all discussion by Commission members and will be permitted to address the Commission during each agenda item and during public communications on non-agenda items. All members of the public wishing to attend or participate by telephone will be placed on hold in a virtual waiting room until the meeting starts and will be muted during the business portion of the meeting. The chairperson will unmute and recognize each member of the public in no particular order until all have had an opportunity to be heard. The City of Fraser and the Planning Commission thanks everyone for their understanding and support as we all attempt to navigate these challenging times together. Would you all join me and Mr. Plajinski, if you can get the flag, we can say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Be able to share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
We could do. There we go.
Thank you.
I don't see
the flag.
Not there.
Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Is it working, Doug?
Looks like it's loading.
Oh, there we go.
There
All
we go.
right.
Next slide.
Well, we got to say the pledge, right? Can you see it?
Yes.
The flag is your next slide.
Then the flag is your next, or your previous slide.
I'm sorry. Hang on.
That's okay. We can go forward. Not to worry about it, Doug.
Well, I want the rest of the deck up too. So.
Okay.
Now is it up?
Thank you.
Yes,
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it
which
stands,
stands
One nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all.
for all. Thank you. Mr. Plajinski, would you please do the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Perry.
Here.
R.
Here.
Cook. Not here. Farina.
Here,
Kyle.
Here.
Warreneck.
Here.
Sarnecki.
Here. And let the record reflect that Commissioner Cook did send an email message to let us know that he would be absent from tonight's meeting, so he is excused. Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 3, approval of agenda. Are there any
I'm-
changes to the agenda? Revisions, anyone? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, I got Mr. Farina to move to approve the agenda as printed. I did not catch whose support.
John Kyle.
Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved by Commissioner Farina, support by John Kyle to approve the agenda as printed. Can you do roll call, Mr. Plazinski, please?
Sure. Warnick,
Yes.
Kyle,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Farina,
Yes.
Sarnecki.
Yes. Motion carried unanimously. Agenda item 4, Chairperson's opening remarks. Tonight's meeting will follow the agenda that was posted online. And before we begin, it's important to let everyone know that the Planning Commission is created by state law. The commission is comprised of 7 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council. The role of the Planning Commission is to plan and promote the efficient, coordinated development of the city for the health, safety, and general welfare of its residents. We are not here to negotiate with applicants or to allow everything an applicant is requesting. However, the Planning Commission does have the power to approve certain requests and recommend others, depending on the nature of the request and whether all of the standards in the zoning ordinance have been met. The Planning Commission may also impose conditions on a proposed project in order to ensure those standards are met. Other individuals here tonight at this meeting are the City Attorney, Mr. Clark Andrews, as well as Alyssa Albright from his office, City Planner Doug Plazinski, and Danielle Bouchard from McKenna, and representatives of the Building Department. Maybe, I'm not sure. I hope I did not miss anybody. Okay. We'll go to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. July 20, 2020. Anybody have any revisions to the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as printed.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from July 20th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting as printed.
Support?
I'll second it.
And that was Commissioner, I didn't catch you.
Perry.
Perry, thank you. Okay, I cannot see who's speaking. Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Okay, so it's been moved by Commissioner Kyle and support by Commissioner Perry to approve the minutes of July 20, 2020 as printed. Mr. Plazinski, can you take roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Perry,
Here.
Kyle,
Yes.
Warnick,
Yes.
Farina,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Sarnecki.
Yes, motion carried unanimously.
Sorry, I meant to say yes, not here.
Agenda item 6, new business. 6A, preliminary site plan 20-004, auto zone site plan review. Location, address to be determined, west side of Utica Road, south of Meyer entrance. Proposal, the site plan proposes to remove 85 of Meyer's parking spaces, construct a new 6,816 square foot independent retail building with 46 parking spaces and replace 15 parking spaces for Meyer. I'm going to caption our agenda item number 6B because it correlates, both applications kind of are dependent on each other. So 6B is preliminary site plan 20-005, Meyer site plan amendment review. Location is 34835 Utica Road. Proposal, the Meyer site plan amendment proposes to remove 85 of Meyer's parking spaces, divide land from the Meyer site, and replace 15 parking spaces for Meyer. The net parking loss to the Meyer development is 70 parking spaces for 1,079 remaining parking spaces. Mr. Plazinski, can you do your reviews, please?
Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to do them both?
Why don't you take the 6A first, but then if you can kind of explain how it intertwines with 6B.
Sure. Okay. So I will go through the AutoZone review first.
And you know, Mr. Plazinski, let me go back and say, yes, do both reviews, but maybe questions after A and then do the review, and we can have questions after B, if that
Certainly.
works for you. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. McKenna reviewed the site plan submission. The plans are dated June 30th, 2020 for a new AutoZone store on the west side of Utica, just south of the main Meyer driveway. This is the Meyer that's on the southwest corner of 15 Mile and Utica Roads. The site is zoned CG General Business District. This district is designed to provide a wide diversity of business activities, which are predominantly retail. General merchandise stores are permitted uses in the CG district. The minimum lot size in the CG district is 12,000 square feet. This site is about 4.5 times that size at 56,000 square feet, or about 1.3 acres. The minimum lot width is 80 feet. This parcel is almost 3 times that width. All of the other lot dimensions meet the zoning ordinance requirements. The maximum building height is 30 feet or 2 stories. According to the elevation submitted, this building is nowhere near 3 feet tall, so it complies with the height requirement because it's 24 feet at its tallest point. For retail stores, the parking required under the ordinance 1 space per 150 square feet. So that would require 46 spaces on this site, and that is what the applicant proposes. And they have 2 barrier-free van accessible spaces. This parcel will not have its own driveway to Utica Road, which definitely is in the city's interest and the county's interest to keep driveways at a minimum on major thoroughfares like Utica. So all of the traffic is entering the AutoZone site at internal driveways on the northwest and southeast corners. There is a way that traffic can exit in the southwest corner of the site. One of our recommended conditions for this proposed site plan is an easement that allows for cross access from the AutoZone property to Meyer and vice versa. There are a couple other parts to that, either a couple other more easements or a couple other parts to one easement that are I'll go over in our recommendations also. I would like to also point out that AutoZone provides a pedestrian connection straight from the front of the store to the sidewalk on Utica Road. It was really great that they did that. That's usually one of our comments, and we didn't have to add them or go back and ask them to add that in. They have 1 loading space at the west side of the building that meets the ordinance requirements for loading. The landscape plan as presented meets all of the city's requirements for street landscaping and internal landscaping to the building. Believe in your materials that were sent out, there should be a example of the building materials. So it's an architectural block that's made to look like brick. And if you have any more questions about that, I'm sure the applicant's representative can answer them. But in general, I believe that's in line with what our architectural expectations are in the city, as well as the dumpster screening, which is located in kind of the center west portion of the site. The applicant provided a photometric plan, and those plans appear to meet code. And all lights are shielded downward. So seeing that and before I read our recommendation, Chair, I also wanted to touch on AEW's review, which I emailed out. I apologize. I don't think it was in the packet that I delivered. but I just wanted to go through their comments real quick. As far as utilities go, there's an existing 12-inch water main under Utica Road within a public utility easement. Excuse me, there's an existing 12-inch main under Utica Road and another public utility easement along the south side of the building. So there's adequate water service to the site. There is no sanitary sewer along the frontage for this property, but there's an extension plan to the Taco Bell to the north. So we've connected this applicant with that developer so that hopefully they can coordinate the improvements and apply for one sewer extension or phases to one sewer extension and minimize the disruption on that driveway. Stormwater collection and pretreatment and output is regional to the Meyer site. The Meyer drainage system was sized and can handle all of the runoff. We would just want, and the engineer calls out that there's a stormwater maintenance and use easement and agreement as part of the required documentation for this site plan. Actually the development of this building will reduce the impervious surface on the site. Other general comments from Mike Vigneron at AEW Engineering. So they provided standard details for paving and storm sewer. The developer will need a soil erosion permit prior to construction. They will need to coordinate a permit or waiver from the Macomb County Department of Roads for any work that will be in the Utica Road right-of-way. They will again have to coordinate that sanitary sewer extension through the Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes and Energy. And there should be a cross-access agreement and a stormwater maintenance agreement. And also I would add potentially a shared parking agreement between the proposed outlot and the Meyer parent parcel. And just that'll tie into my comments in my review letter that those agreements and easements should be reviewed and approved by the city attorney before they're executed and recorded for the site. And that should be a required condition of approval should you decide to approve this proposal. Part of the City of Fraser's site plan review, there are 4 findings that the Planning Commission is sort of directed by the ordinance to engage. The first, and I'll go through those 4 real quick. The location and design of driveways providing vehicular access to the proposed AutoZone retail development are arranged to promote the safety and convenience of vehicles and pedestrians and to provide access in a manner that promotes internal circulation. The second finding is that the proposed AutoZone retail development features are arranged to minimize the potential of any negative impact upon surrounding property. The proposed AutoZone retail development does not channel excessive traffic onto local residential streets. Parking and service areas within the proposed development are adequately screened, and the development will not impede emergency vehicle access. The third finding is all building, driveway, and parking lots for this development are compatible with the physical characteristics of the site, including but not limited to woodlands, wetlands, slopes, floodplains, and soil suitability. The proposed AutoZone development will not have an adverse impact on the natural environment of the site or the surrounding area. Number 4, that the city engineer's evaluation confirms the adequacy of public or private services and utilities proposed to service the site, including water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater retention for the proposed development. And again, the conditions we're recommending, the first is the applicant must present shared parking, access, and utility easements to the city attorney for review prior to recording them at the Macomb County Register of Deeds. And secondly, as Chairwoman Sarnecki alluded to, beginning this item, it is tie barred to the parent parcel, Meyer, securing a site plan amendment that allows it to reduce its parking space count to the proposed 1,079 remaining spaces. So with that, Madam Chair, concludes our report on PSP 20004, the auto zone site plan review.
Thank you, Mr. Plazinski. Do any of the members have questions? Discussion?
I do. I have my hand up.
Commissioner Farina, please.
Hey, Doug, we've granted, or Myers has allowed Hockey Land to use part of their parking lot for parking buses during extreme events over there. Have you guys looked at that in conjunction? Are we eating up any buffer that was there?
I don't believe so, and the reason I don't think that's the case is because Hockey Land, anytime they do have what they consider an extreme event, is supposed to kind of present how they're going to handle parking. So
Okay.
Meyer is certainly one potential overflow parking area. And according to Meyer's needs, they still think that they have 400 excess parking spaces, even if they were to allow this. And B, there are other locations like the school district, the Lions Club field that were also included in that kind of parking management approach.
Right.
So I think that I don't think that it would impact any viable Hockey Land events.
Okay.
But thank you. That's an excellent point.
Any other questions?
Yes. I keep trying out of
Commissioner
raise.
Warnick?
Yes, I did. Doug, I was just wondering if you had any input from the Public Safety Department with fire and access around the building.
We did not receive anything for this development.
Okay.
Mr. Plazinski, I have a question on the AEW review, item number 3, where you say the sanitary sewer, you're suggesting that they connect with Taco Bell. Is Taco Bell a still viable project? And if it's not, do they have to connect to whatever tenant would be there?
If not, they would have to extend on their own. But I believe the applicant representative could probably address where they're at with coordinating that.
Okay.
And the goal is that it's not so much to save them money, it's that Taco Bell will essentially have to shut down the Meyer driveway to make its extension. So better to shut it down once and connect all the way through to this site than to have to shut it down twice to bore back in or trench back in over to it after Taco Bell's completed their work. There may be some economies to scale with them getting it all done at once. They can figure out how to cost share, but really our position was we'd like that big driveway to only get shut down once if it could.
Okay, understood. Okay. And there's no conflict with the parking. I know we'll address the Meyer amendment, but no conflict with the parking with the newest retail, Starbucks and Coney Island and so forth, correct?
That is correct. There's no conflict.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Plazinski? Discussion? And you'll have to speak up because I don't see everybody on the screen to say whose hand is up.
I believe Commissioner Farina's hand is up.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Farina, please.
I'm sorry. It slipped my mind.
It'll come back to you. And I believe we have the representative, Mr. Berlin.
Yes, it has.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Farina.
Doug, I listen to city council meetings and often we have the city engineer saying that our sewage system is old and overtaxed now. How does that play into adding more and more into it? Or have they reviewed it and said this is okay to go?
They will review the final permit application. I believe, what is typical is the applicant or the project proponent will complete the application and the city has to support it when it goes to the DEQ. So I think that they'll do if they need to do a deeper dive on that analysis, then they will. But they don't seem to be concerned about the sanitary sewer extension here. And
Okay. The other thing, you supplied us in the package, the site plan review checklist, and it's not made out. Does that mean it's not done? If it's not done, how do we know we can vote on it? And if it is done, why isn't it made out in our package?
it was just the paperwork that was attached to the
Got it.
application they submitted. It's an administrative checklist. It's been entered into the BSA system and sent out to all the appropriate departments. Just so you're aware, with assessing, they will need to complete the steps that get those sharing agreements in place, those easements, or at least have an agreement that they've executed with the city outside of those easements, that everything is copacetic, and that as soon as the land division is allowed, they will execute the easements and get them recorded. And that's something Clark has worked particularly diligently with on the Taco Bell site. So, I envision the same process here with this site, and assessing has been very involved in that.
Okay. As you said, public safety didn't comment. Is that normal? Should they comment?
On the site, for something that'll require a land division, yes. And actually, the Taco Bell land division has not occurred yet. So we've been pushing them to get it going, because they certainly want to start construction as soon as they can. But COVID delayed the closing on the property like 6 months then.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Plazinski, then I have a question with the application too, that the application is not signed by the property owner. Is that something we should be concerned about, since Meyer actually signed their application that they submitted, but not the AutoZone?
It's signed by somebody that has a purchase agreement interest in the property.
Okay,
And
so
we typically accept that because, the purchase is contingent on several things, including the site plan amendment or the
Okay.
site approval.
okay, all right, thank you.
When it gets to these kinds of corporations, we generally don't require, that they give us the purchase agreement with financial terms redacted, but the city certainly reserves that right if we feel like we're not sure who is making the application. But we're aware that there's an agreement in place.
Okay. And so to make sure that I understand correctly, any lot split planning commission, it has nothing to do with lot splits. That's going to be administrative through assessing department. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's under state law.
Okay, thank you.
One other question, Doug. You under item 4, you said a sign plan was not submitted, but yet on that site plan SP1, there is a monument sign listed there as being included. Are they going to have to come back for that then?
No, that's administratively approved.
Okay.
The zoning ordinance was changed some time back to require that. I think they're just showing it as an example of where it will be.
Well, I like monument stands much better than I like stick stands, stilt stands, whatever you want to call
I agree. They are attractive, and I think this will be an attractive building for the area.
them. Okay. Thank
Doug?
you.
Commissioner Warnick, go ahead.
Okay. The reason I brought up public safety and fire department, and Frank mentioned it again, is if you look on that site plan review checklist, there's some important things on there, and I think they should have some input every time, so we know that if we're going to approve this setup for is there adequate vehicle access for fire equipment? Are there adequate accessible fire lanes without moving cars or equipment? And any additional on-site fire protection systems necessary, and then the location of the hydrants. No, usually in the plan that they meet the distances though. So I think we really should be getting the input from them, whether they just put just a in-house quick little note together or something and address those issues. I think it's very important that we keep doing that. We used to do that all the time.
Yes, sir. I'm under the impression the building department notifies them when they get a site plan, but I'll double check that and make sure it happens
And just keep us.
if it's not.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay, so we assume that everything is A-okay at this point, even though it's not handwritten.
And it will go through a fire code review.
Correct, okay.
If there's a problem and there needs to be a change, it'll get changed.
It'll
or
get
amended.
changed before final, correct, okay. Any other questions? I'd like to ask the representative from Spartan Engineering, Mr. Berlin, would you like to have any comments on this?
Yeah, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, good evening, sir.
All right, good evening. I apologize for my video. It looks like it's not currently available, and my buttons seem to have changed where I can't restart it, so I apologize for that. You guys have done a great job really outlining the project. I appreciate that, introducing and outlining the project. I would just like to add that AutoZone is very excited about this. I think this is a great location for them, a great site layout, and they're excited to become part of the community and bring a business in need. If there's any other specific items I can address, there was a couple I wrote down here about access easements, status of the sanitary extension. Upon your guys's thumbs up to give me that if now's the time to do that, or let me know when. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions that do come up.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Berlin? I do, Mr. Berlin. The pedestrian walk to Utica, can you tell me how wide that is?
Yes. It's 5 feet wide.
5 feet,
5 feet.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Mhm.
Yep.
And on the landscape plan, as much as I tried to find that, there's a bold asterisk saying that evergreen tree is going to remain. I could not find that bold asterisk on that landscape plan. And I did do a site visit today. There are actually 2 evergreen trees. One is just gorgeous. The other is a little bit leaning. Can you explain which tree is to remain? Do you help me with that?
Yeah, it looks like you're correct that the legend may not correspond directly with the plan, but the 2 evergreens are to the south of where the sidewalk connection goes out to Utica Road.
Correct.
One is close to the back of where the parking lot will be, and then one is kind of in the central proposed grass area. Both of those are proposed to remain.
Both of them are. Okay,
That's
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And Mr. Berlin, can you walk us through your brick architectural block? How that is it similar to brick? What is it? Can you discuss it, please?
Yes, it is. As far as durability and look from the outside, it's essentially the same as brick. Essentially what it is it's a structural block that has a brick face on the exterior. So as opposed to a typical CMU block building with brick that's affixed to the outside, this basically just eliminates that two course construction and just replaces it with one. So AutoZone has found that it's cost competitive from a labor standpoint. But visually from the outside and as far as longevity, everything that you would expect of brick, you would get out of this material.
Okay. Is this a prototype for all AutoZone stores?
This building type, meaning like the size and the window layout is their prototype?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it is. The brick is a, you know, when a municipality requires it, we upgrade to a brick, but the actual layout of the building is a prototype, yes.
Okay. Okay. And I cannot pull out my plan in front of me because it's so big on my desk, but the windows that aren't actually windows, I don't know how you described them. I think it's number 18.
Yeah,
Can you have real windows above the facade windows, I think. Is there a reason for the facade windows?
Yeah, so like it should be keynote number 19.
Okay.
So where the customer doors are, to the left and to the right, there's a couple window panes that are see-through. And then to the left and right of those, there's those, I'll call them vertical rectangular panes. Those are what they call faux windows. So those are intended just to break up the building facade,
Okay.
and not just have big expanses of block or brick.
Okay.
The three windows that run horizontal, that are above that, so there's three to the left and three to the right, those are clear and they sit physically above the shelving unit. The ones that have the opaque glass covering have shelving directly behind them. So it's meant just for a visual break on the exterior.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berlin. Any other questions of Mr. Berlin?
I just have one. Notice you have an 8-inch PVC storm sewer, typical from the roof drains, going into a 12-inch sewer.
Yes.
What does maybe this is for Doug and not you, I'm not sure. Doug, what does Meyer have coming down? I mean, do they have 12-inch or 8-inch or 6-inch or? And is 6 adequate for that?
I'll have to pull that sheet up.
I'm just worried about, when we get a storm like we got earlier this year, are we going to be able to take all that rainwater out? Or is it going to be held in the parking lot, and go into?
It's appropriate. I can certainly answer that question.
What's that?
Thanks, Wes.
The 8-inch roof conductor pipes for the AutoZone building will handle in excess of the 100-year storm event for the roof area. So that's certainly sufficient for AutoZone's drainage. The site as it sits today is served by a 12-inch diameter storm sewer pipe. And as Doug had mentioned earlier, we're actually reducing the impervious surface. So that 12-inch will handle our site flow up to probably the 10-year event that was sized for. Anything in addition to that would just flow overland through Myers parking lot, and presumably they have an overland overflow to the detention area.
Okay,
Does
thank
that
you.
make sense?
Yep.
Ms. Berlin,
Commissioner Warnick, please.
just for the record and to make sure that we're all on the same page, that block is color impregnated, right?
Yeah, the block for the building.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's not painted.
Good.
Like I had said before, it's the equivalent of a brick that would be affixed to a block. So it would be structurally, visually, longevity, duration, maintenance. It would be just like a brick material.
Good. I just want to make sure nobody thinks that they're being painted.
Yep. Thank you for the question.
Thanks.
And
One last question.
Okay.
I might have missed it. Do you have a sprinkler system going in for your green areas?
Yes, all of the non-pavement, non-building areas will all be irrigated sod.
And where would I find that on what sheet?
The actual irrigation design is not in these plans, but there's probably a note to the effect on, there's probably a couple notes actually. Let me check the site plan. All right, site plan doesn't have it. Let me check the landscape.
Yeah, it looks like-
The landscape plan, if you look at the plan view itself, has got a hatching area for where all the grass is designated. And then the
Yes.
legend itself, if you look for that same kind of dot pattern hatching, it's called out as irrigated stake sod.
Very good. All right, thank you.
There's also a note number 10, Commissioner Farina, under the general landscaping notes. Says they'll receive permanent underground automatic irrigation.
Good. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. Mr. Plazinski, can you go to item 6B and go through the Meyer site plan amendment review?
Yes, ma'am. So for the item 6B, which is site plan 20005, what they're proposing is that to amend the Meyer site plan, removing 85 of the parking spaces, dividing that 1.3-ish acres off of the Meyer site, and replacing 15 parking spaces for Meyer on the Meyer property. So basically those 15 spaces go across the west new property boundary. And then that will leave, after removing, a net of 70 spaces, 1,079 remaining parking spaces. So again, on your screen, the blue hatched area is kind of those 15 new spaces. And then the other arrows show the parking spaces that'll be removed. And as we can kind of tell from this aerial, they're not necessarily heavily used parking spaces out on this side of the property. I know in the past you've seen a letter from 2018 that talks about Meyer's impression of their parking assignment here, their parking program. An email I got earlier this year says that Meyer's shoots for about 3 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of building. So with 210,000 square feet, they envision needing 630 spaces. Again, that's over 400 more spaces this site has than that number. They don't build buildings this size anymore. Their largest building they'll build is around 158,000 square feet, and they shoot for something in the range of 475 parking spaces. The property sales manager goes on and says it's a general rule of thumb, and some factors can affect that, but it's a good starting place. So I want to get into my review a little bit, because specific to this review, we took a look at, we mentioned that earlier this year, the ZBA allowed Meyer to reduce their parking lot program to 1,149 spaces, where previously 1,608 parking spaces were required by the ordinance calculation. So essentially what this does is the ZBA gave Meyer the ability to have the reduced parking requirement through a variance. Now, since then, the city has adopted some provisions in their zoning ordinance that they call the modification of commercial parking requirements by the Planning Commission. So this process allows the Planning Commission to review a proposed parking reduction or a modification of the standards if it were a new site, based on criteria that are listed in the ordinance rather than the criteria that would need to be applied to grant a variance, like the practical difficulty and the uniqueness of the property. So I'm just going to go through the way the ordinance is structured. Is it says the Planning Commission needs to find the alternative parking proposed meets some criteria. The first being that there's documentation of other instances or similar land uses. From the ZBA minutes from January 16th this year, it was stated that Meyer needs around 600 parking spaces to service the Fraser store. Now, granted, that's not necessarily data, but it's kind of precedent that, they've repeated it and they've established from their point of view, that's their belief. The next is statistical information regarding parking demand. We do not have that. Any additional data supporting and parking generation manual, we don't have that, but we do have Myers saying that they need 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail for the store here in Fraser. And I'm inclined to think that they're they understand their needs better than even the parking generation manuals do. I don't believe they're trying to undercut their parking, and even if that were the case, they're still looking at well over 400 additional spaces. So if the Planning Commission considers and approves the site plan amendment modifying the required parking, then you're really only looking at making them reserve the land or commit to an agreement to 70 space difference, because the ZBA already reduced their parking requirement to 1,149. You're not, the Planning Commission under this, I don't believe, could require them to provide banked parking or in a parking agreement, the difference between 1,600 and 8 parking spaces, which is what the ordinance would require them to have, and 1,079. It would only be the 70 space difference between 1,149 and 1,079. And then, there are some conditions in the ordinance that talk about how to go back and request future parking modifications should something else come up. I believe that this is the end of the perimeter outlots or potential outlots. But we never know. I mean, there's still, potentially up to 400 excess parking spaces or more than 400 excess parking spaces. And the last provision in the ordinance I want to point out is the ordinance requires the Planning Commission to, that if the Planning Commission approves a modification, the owner of the property and the operator of the business shall execute and deliver a reserved parking agreement. So it's not permissive. The ordinance says that that must occur. So if that happens, and the Planning Commission agrees to reduce the required parking to 1,079 spaces, I would advise as a condition of approval that the applicant must provide a reserved parking agreement for the planner and city attorney to review prior to execution and recording at the Macomb County Register of Deeds. And that reserved parking agreement should specify or shall specify the zoning ordinance conditions when the applicant must construct the reserved parking spaces. So with that, again, we're to the recommendation that, based on our past understanding of the Meyer parking area and the demands there, and then, Meyer's own testimony that they believe they only need 630 parking spaces for their development, and they're still providing 1,079, that the city, if you approve the plans dated June 26, 2020, that you find, the 4 findings it's listed, I think somehow that may have gotten renumbered, but there are 4. My apologies if there's 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s on your sheets. But essentially, those are the same findings that the zoning ordinance requires the planning commission to find for the vehicular access, the environmental impacts, the traffic production onto adjacent areas and local residential streets, and then that the parking adjustment is appropriate for the use based on type, scale, and intensity, and that the modification is appropriate and wouldn't create adverse impacts. And again, the condition, if the planning commission desires to approve the parking modification and the site plan amendment, would just be that reserved parking agreement is reviewed by the city planner and attorney prior to Meyer executing it and recording it at the Macomb County Register of Deeds. So with that, Madam Chair, that's the conclusion of that report.
Thank you, Mr. Plushinsky. Members have any questions of Mr. Plushinsky?
Doug, I know this isn't you, but what do you think they're gonna do with all that snow they pile up there? They can't dump it on where AutoZone is now. And what is AutoZone gonna do with all their snow? Brush it into the green area in front of them?
Well, I believe that AutoZone will manage their snow on their site, unless that's part of the easement agreement they developed with Meyer. So as far as Meyer goes, is that typically the area where they pile snow?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, then they're going to have to shove it somewhere else on their site.
Okay.
But the good news is they still have 400 parking spaces worth of area that they claim they won't need to be parking cars in.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Any other questions? Mr. Plushinsky, can you help me out? We're taking spaces away, but giving them back. The 15 spaces, are we giving them back? Is that just the process we have to go through because the 15 spaces are in a different fashion? Is that why?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I was just explaining that where Meyer is having 85 spaces taken away to develop the AutoZone site, they're reconfiguring 15 of them that are still accessible and on the Meyer property when they're said and done with construction. So it's not that there's 50, those 15 spaces are not on AutoZone's land. AutoZone is just restoring them as part of their agreement with
Okay.
Meyer.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
are you gonna ask about bike racks?
Thank you, Commissioner Farina. Yes, can we, yes, that would go with the AutoZone, with our 6A. Yes, I could ask for a bike rack. I agree with you. Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to make a notation on that. Are there any other questions with the amendment, the Meyer site plan amendment?
We're gonna vote on these separately, correct?
Yes, we are. And so I'm going to, if there are no other questions or discussion, I'm going to jump back to agenda item 6A. And we'll vote on the AutoZone site plan review.
Madam Chairman, you wanna ask for public comment if there's any before that?
I would like to do that, yes. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Plushinsky, do you see anybody in the audience? I do not.
No, and there's no one waiting to get in.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I will make a suggestion. If when I entertain a motion for the AutoZone site plan review, another condition, well, I would ask, please, personally, if we can make a condition of to add a bike rack, but also to condition approval or I should say, approval is contingent upon the approval of PSP 20005. We need to correlate these two applications. So one of the other conditions, the motion should contain that this approval is conditioned on approval of the PSP 20-005 Meyer site plan amendment review.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve PSP 20-04 AutoZone Site Plan Review number 1 with the addition of an area for a bike rack. And that with conditions that the applicant must present a shared parking access and utility easements to the city attorney for review prior to recording at the Macomb County Register of Deeds, and the parent parcel must secure a site plan amendment to reduce its parking counts to 1,079 remaining spaces.
I'll support with those conditions.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Farina and support by Commissioner Warnick to approve PSP 20-004 AutoZone with 4 conditions, I believe. Mr. Plazinski, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Farina,
Yes.
Commissioner Warnick,
Yes,
Commissioner Kyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Commissioner Barr. And
Have we lost
And-
Commissioner?
she's there.
Okay.
We just got it muted.
Yeah, she's muted. I can unmute her.
You can unmute her.
No, I can't unmute her.
All right, am I
There we go.
unmuted now?
You're unmuted.
I've been getting messages on my computer saying the connection is unstable.
Oh, so Commissioner Barr, was that a yes for you?
Yes, that was yes.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Sarnecki,
Yes,
that motion passes 6-0.
thank you. Can I am sorry that I forgot to ask Mr. Berlin if are you still available, Mr. Berlin?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Oh, thank you. Can you kind of go over your connection with Taco Bell when it comes to the sanitary sewer? Or do you have some type of communication with Taco Bell?
Yes, AutoZone's real estate department has been discussing the very good questions that you guys had relative to timing and everything that Taco Bell is doing. So our preference is to connect over with Taco Bell's line. Last I had spoken to AutoZone was last week, and I think they're developing some sort of agreement that goes over shared costs and things of that nature. So that's the direction we're heading. If for some reason that communication breaks down or schedules don't align, our fallback option would be to go under Utica Road and connect up kind of northeast of our site. There's an existing sanitary infrastructure line that we would extend on the east side of Utica Road as a backup.
Now, if that happens, you would be required to fix Utica Road, and repave it, correct?
We would propose to directional drill or bore and jack and do a trenchless installation in that scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to shut Utica down. That's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah. It's expensive.
Thank you, Mr. Berlin, and congratulations on the AutoZone application.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good luck.
Okay, to agenda item 6B, the Meyer site plan amendment review. I will entertain a motion for that. But Mr. Andrews, can I ask you a question, please? Does this motion, should that be contingent on approval of the AutoZone, or do we need that?
It depends on whether the planning commission wants the site plan amendment for this one to only apply if the AutoZone thing goes through. It would seem to me if some other development came through on the AutoZone site or that area of the Meyer site, that it's not likely to be exactly the same footprint and exactly the same parking. So I think it makes sense to have both of them be conditioned.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I entertain a motion on the Meyer site plan amendment.
I can make a motion for the approval of PSP 20-005 with the following conditions. The applicant must provide a reserved parking agreement for the city planner and city attorney to review prior to the execution and recording at the Macomb County Register of Deeds that accommodates the 7 parking space reduction beyond previous variances granted for the development. The reserved parking agreement shall specify the zoning ordinance conditions required to the construction of reserved parking spaces. And add one more. This is also with the approval of the PSP 20-004.
Thank you, Commissioner Kyle. Support?
Support.
Commissioner Farina? It's been moved by Commissioner Kyle and support by Commissioner Farina to approve PSP 20-005 Meyer site plan amendment with 2 conditions. Mr. Plazinski, is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Andrews.
I had a question about, is that truly a shared parking arrangement or are we talking about those 15 parking spaces and that those aren't really shared, are they? They're on the Meyer property and I thought that what was happening in that area was that as part of AutoZone's agreement with Meyer, they were to not necessarily donate, but essentially make sure that there were 15 extra parking spaces that were on the Meyer property striped and paved and so forth for the use of the Meyer customers. I did not understand that to be a shared parking agreement arrangement. Maybe Mr. Plazinski could clarify that for me. I may be mistaken about that.
Well, I think that given the proximity, and not that they're proposing using shared parking to meet any of their required obligations, but if they are sharing the facilities and infrastructure, there may be people that are parking at AutoZone going to Meyer, or people that are parking at Meyer and also going to AutoZone. It seems intuitive that they would have some sort of agreement as part of their other shared infrastructure and access agreements. But if you don't see the need for that, I'm fine with that.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't know whether that is something that has been discussed. And my experience in dealing with Meyer in the past is that if it wasn't something that was discussed and they agreed to, then there's certainly a possibility that they are going to say, we didn't have that understanding with them. And if they meet the requirements of the ordinance without the shared parking, I guess I want to know whether or not we want to impose that requirement. And then if Myers said we never agreed to that, then it seems to me it has to then come back to the planning commission. So maybe we could award it that the city recommends that there be a shared parking arrangement with respect to those 15 spots, so that hopefully they would agree that they would do that. But if they meet the requirements without that, I'm not sure that the city can require that they do it.
Can we ask Mr. Berlin if they talked about that with Myers?
Sure.
Yes, please. Hi, everyone. This is Wesley Berlin. Thank you for the question, Mr. Andrews. That I kind of was a little bit confused when we talked about the shared parking, what that was relative to. So I'm happy you brought that up. Those 15 stalls that we're proposing on Meyer's site were meant to exclusively be used by Meyer, and there have been no discussions between Meyer and AutoZone about shared parking, and our preference from AutoZone side and from Meyer based on their purchase agreement would be not to enter into a purchase into a parking agreement. Just leave those be for Meyer, and our site would be for our use for AutoZone.
Well, do we have to withdraw our approval of prior site plan then?
Yeah, because
Um,
that's where the shared parking agreement, that was the condition.
I think it'd probably be a good idea to
Punch?
reconsider it and then remove that condition, because otherwise I think you're gonna end up having somebody have to come back here in order to remove that if neither one of the parties had an expectation that they were gonna be required to share parking.
But if there's no shared parking, then there doesn't need to be an easement.
I'm sorry, there doesn't need to be what?
There does not need to be, if they're not proposing and there will not be any shared parking, there doesn't need to be an easement. For example, what if Meyer decides not to allow AutoZone to use their stormwater detention? Then there wouldn't need to, we require AutoZone to come back if they propose instead tapping into the storm sanitary that's available on Utica?
Yes.
I think that they're gonna have to meet the city's stormwater, requirements, and unless the planning commission is dictating that it has to be one way rather than another, they're not gonna get permits unless they meet the requirement of providing satisfactory stormwater. But the impression, I guess what I was curious about was whether the planning commission's intention is to require that it be done in a joint way, or whether as long as they meet the city code and city engineering requirements, that they would be able to do it independent of one another rather than having it have to be done together. I have, in my experience with Meyer over my 40 years of practices, they really like to have their sites be as independent as they possibly can. They certainly recognize that there are instances where cross-access easements and things like that are necessary in order to meet road commission requirements for minimal curb cuts on the roads like Utica Road and so forth. But and they have cooperated with respect to doing that with respect to other outlot developments in this area. But what I'm a little bit concerned about is if AutoZone or any other outlot developer can meet the ordinance requirements without having it be a shared arrangement, and neither one of the parties wants a shared arrangement, it seems to me that if we include in the motion that it has to be that way, then if it turns out that they talk later and say neither one of us wanted that, then they're going to have to come back to the planning commission and eliminate that condition. And I believe there was a little confusion on, at least on my part, as to whether that 15 parking spaces was intended to be shared parking or not, and it was just made clear by the representative of AutoZone that's worked on these site plans that neither one of the parties wanted to have those 15 spaces that are on Meyer's property be shared parking. And so I think that to require that, if they can meet the requirements otherwise, is probably not a great idea.
Mark, I think our prior condition was an if. it says the applicant must present any shared parking access and utility easement. That means if there are any. So I think our previous condition is actually met. If there aren't any, then they don't have to provide them. I think is that what you're trying to say, that they must provide? But if, according to our condition,
Well, my question is for Doug. Doug, is that what you meant? That's what I've been trying to get my hand up there.
That if they are proposing any sort of shared anything, that Clark or the city attorney review the easements before they're executed and recorded.
I agree with that completely.
So that was the intent of the motion. If you want to vote on it to
No,
clarify.
I think that if that was your intention, and it was not to mandate that they have shared parking or shared whatever, but in the event that they do, they have to have the proposed agreement reviewed and approved before it's executed and recorded. I completely am in agreement with that. And truthfully, that's an important consideration, because on one of these projects last year, they executed the documents before they were reviewed, and that made it more difficult. So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
A good point, Clark. We do need to be cognizant of that kind of language.
Okay, I'm going to make sure that we have nobody else in the audience. Is there a representative here from Meyer? I don't see anybody else besides Mr. Berlin.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is Wes Berlin. I was representing Meyer for this amendment and AutoZone this evening.
Okay, so well, right now we have a motion on the floor for the site plan amendment, and can we go through the roll call for that?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Pojinski, please.
Commissioner Kyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Farina,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Commissioner Barr,
Yes.
Commissioner Warnick,
yes.
and Chairwoman Zarnecki.
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. So going back to the AutoZone site plan, we are all set with that, the way,
Yes,
okay,
we are.
okay. Everyone's satisfied, good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Mr. Berlin.
All right. Thank you all. Be safe.
You
Okay,
too.
we're going to go to agenda item number 7, unfinished business, City of Fraser Master Plan. Is Ms. Bouchard going to take care of this?
Yep.
Okay.
So just a quick update for you guys. We've been moving forward on the master plan process. As we discussed from the last meeting, the next steps are to finalize and put together the public engagement piece for the master plan, which will be ready to go by September 1st. You guys will be seeing a document draft that's all completely formatted to date within the next couple of weeks, probably prior to the next meeting. Sarah and I are working on getting kind of all of that buttoned up and put together for you guys to kind of continually review as we move forward. As we previously discussed, we have all of the existing conditions kind of all put together in draft format, and then we are moving forward with the future land use portion and just kind of working amongst ourselves to put together some initial findings, and then that'll be passed over to you guys to also provide your feedback and ideas, comments, questions, concerns. I think that pretty much sort of covers where we're at with that. If anyone has any questions on where we are in the process, just kind of moving forward, and you guys will be continually updated as more stuff kind of comes through and formatted.
Thank you, Ms. Bouchard. Any commissioners have questions? I think you're all set then, Ms. Bouchard. Thank you very much for the update.
No problem. And anyone feel free to reach me if you have any questions. Sarah and I are available.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, public communications on non-agenda items. I am not aware of any. Agenda 9, zoning board of appeals member liaison report. Commissioner Farina.
Hey, we had a meeting. And you're all familiar with the Oak Ridge Market. There were 2 structures put in the parking lot. For sake of talking, I'm going to talk about there's a north structure and a south structure. And the ZBA action had to do with the south structure. The south structure was built to be 3 separate businesses. That has not come about. And what they are doing is they are piggybacking 2 franchises in there, a sliders business and a pizza business. And they are tenants in common for that, but they are separate franchises. And the ZBA action was to grant them additional signage and to allow them to exceed the signage square footage of the signage that is allowed by, I think, 40 square feet. And I think it's about 40 square feet, if I recall correctly. And that was the positive action, and we approved that. We're looking forward to them getting started, and they're very excited about doing it. So, are there any questions?
Commissioner Farina, it has nothing to do with the ZBA, but did either the tenants discuss the dumpster that was tried?
I actually asked about that.
Okay,
And they said they're going to live with what is approved now
okay,
for the time being. Yeah.
okay. Looking forward to the projects. That's great.
Yeah.
Any questions of Mr. Commissioner Farina? Thank you, Commissioner Farina. Agenda item 10, Commissioner comments, items of interest and concerns. Let's start with Commissioner Perry.
I've got nothing at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Farina?
All set. Want to thank everybody for all their hard work, and it's tough to coordinate these Zoom meetings, and appreciate all your patience.
Echo that. Thank you. Commissioner Barr?
I have nothing at this time.
Commissioner Warnick?
Yes, I do have one item. I probably owe an apology to the applicant for the 2 agenda items today, but the result of that was because I don't think we're getting our packets early enough. I apologize. I left town on Wednesday morning for a golf outing weekend. I didn't get back till late last night, and my packet was here at my place, and then I really couldn't give the time it really deserved after having to work today. I know when I was administrative for so many years, the commission would hammer me if we were late a day. And we've always said a week ahead of time. And if I would have gotten the packet a week ahead of time, I'd planned on Tuesday. I thought there was really not going to be anything then, except maybe just the stuff with the master plan and that. And so it really, I couldn't be as effective as I think I should have been. So my apologies for that, but I really think we need to have these packets 1 week prior. That was the way we had always been. And the way I got hammered by commission members. So I guess I'm just taking it back. And Doug, I apologize, but we do need to do that, because if something like this had happened with me, I really want to be effective as a member of this board.
Well, certainly, the agendas did not get finally set with the Zoom meeting information until after last Monday. So I apologize. They did go out Wednesday, and pretty early afternoon on Wednesday. I will do everything I can to make sure they get out a week ahead of time. And certainly, I encourage any commissioners, if you happen to notice that something's not there, you're expecting it, feel free to call, email, text, and get attention. And in your case, Randy, I probably could have gotten you everything without the actual agenda itself, but typically I wouldn't deliver it without it being put together. So I apologize. We're doing our best to try to get it there, ahead of time, and we missed your window this month. So I do apologize for that.
You didn't know I was going to be gone either. So.
I hope you had a good time on your outing.
We had an excellent time. We had perfect weather.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Commissioner Kyle, you have any comments?
Nothing at this time. No.
Okay. Mr. Plozinski, I do appreciate your time, and maybe we as commissioners can give you a heads up too if we are going out of town and saying, what can you provide me if we know you're gonna, if we might miss that packet that arrives at our front door. So we could be helpful too.
I think what we sort of like to do going forward is to email out the packet.
Good idea.
And deliver hard copies. So, that way, if there is an issue, if we have an applicant that's running a day behind getting us paper copies or something that at least it's hitting your email on the day, with maybe a note saying this is what's missing. We're going to get this out as soon as we get this in, and here's why. So at least that way it's sort of a heads up.
Right, that might be helpful. The agenda itself, just to know what's on the agenda too, so that would be helpful.
We can do the whole packet. I mean, everything we're putting in now, we get electronically.
Terrific, great.
We can assemble an electronic packet, and potentially that could even be posted on the city's website.
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Do that.
Yes. Did you, Mr. Plozinski, did you get a lot of updates to your technical review? Any comments from our commissioners, and how is that going?
I got a couple. Our next step is to take a look at those, and then I believe we're going to go to city council and ask them for permission to get into the next phase of ordinance rewriting. So implementing those recommendations.
Okay.
So I would expect McKenna to be working with council soon on that.
Okay. And when I did my site visit today for the Meyer project, I noticed that Starbucks is open. I don't know when it opened, but it's open. So
Yes,
I was happy to see that. September 2nd is our next meeting. Do we have anything on the agenda, Mr. Plozinski?
Is it the 2nd?
It is the 2nd. I know Labor Day follows after, so yeah, Labor Day is not until September 7.
Oh, you're right. I'm not aware of anything application-wise. I know that there are some applications coming in, but I don't think they'll be ready for the 2nd.
Okay. You'll keep us advised, right?
Certainly. I would, we definitely want to go over the getting the master plan survey out and everything at the 2nd. And hopefully also at the 2nd, we can report back on some of our research on the marijuana issue. So we brought up before.
Okay, good.
Because we have been working on that. We just haven't wrapped it all up into a package to present to you yet. But definitely we're working on it, and we have another community close by that's engaged us on the same discussion. So it's all coming together pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And do you have a quote for us this evening?
I do. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next. I thought this was
very appropriate.
Very timely.
Everything's going back to school now.
all right.
And this was Abraham Lincoln. That young
Abraham
man
Lincoln.
there.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Well,
Glad.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn August
2nd.
7th meeting.
And support, please.
2nd.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Kyle and support by Commissioner Farina to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let the record reflect it's 8:25 p.m. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Have a great evening, everyone.
You too.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.